was gonna blow my brains out, but it was raining.
Welcome to OZY Confidential. I'm your host with the most, Eugene S. Robinson. Okay, all right. So there's this guy. He's in a cage. He's what you know as a cage fighter. And he is kicking ass, proverbial, literal, figurative, every measure of the way. Kicking ass after the first round. These fights are typically broken down into 3 rounds. After the second round, something strange happens, something you don't expect. He looks out at the audience, he looks back to the ref, looks at his opponent. The ref says fight. He says, open the gate. Ref says, no, you're ahead on points. What are you doing? You can't. He says, open the gate or I'll climb over the fence. They open the gate. Man walks out through a teeming, screaming crowd, never to return. I asked him why. He said, I didn't come here for that. Flash forward to a Tuesday in September. I'm finishing up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and this guy walks into the academy. He's hanging around, random chatter, and it suddenly dawns on me why he's there. He's there very specifically to fight me. Now I'm rushing to work. I say, cool, sure. Strip, gets down to his shorts, and we roll for about 10 to 12 unscripted minutes. Him, me, alone, no one else in the school, locked door, lights off. At the end of it, he turns to me and says, I've got a soap company. Max Moore, a guy who knows a little something about life, and maybe a lot more than most of us about death.
I actually really enjoyed being in combat.
Yeah, you heard that right. A combat medic who actually enjoyed combat. Look, I'll just let him tell it.
The Marine Corps are our stormtroopers, right? And they go in and they kick in the doors of the worst places that we can come up with. Well, when they get shot or blown up, the corpsman is the guy who goes in and picks him up. And that was my job. The day I took my licensing exam to be a medic was September 11th, when the towers fell.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
As a corpsman, you'll usually do 3 tours in the field, and then you'll do 1 tour back in a hospital. Mm-hmm. They want you to keep your medical skills relevant and fresh.
Right.
And so I got assigned to the ICU in Germany at a Landstuhl Hospital. Mm. It's the biggest American hospital outside of the United States. It's a massive facility, and it's where when guys get shot and blown up, they get stabilized in the field, and then they take a flight to Germany where they are reevaluated and made sure they're stable enough they can make the big trip back to Texas, right. or elsewhere in the U.S. I was working there after having been in multiple combat deployments, and I got assigned to working with guys who were double, triple, sometimes amputees, blind. Some guys had lost their sex organs from explosions, and that was actually the most nightmarish part for me. Mm-hmm. Was knowing as I was in that space that my next assignment was going to be Afghanistan, and so I was dealing with guys who were walking around on burnt up drumsticks for legs, and seeing these guys who were smarter and stronger and more put together than I was. Mm. And now they are a very different person after that incident. My PTSD was mostly actually from that. And I would have these nightmares that I would be, next in the bed. I would keep my shit together as I was dealing with these patients because I didn't want to crumble in front of them. I worked night shifts. I'd get off in the mornings and I would get these these moments as I'm brushing my teeth and looking at my own face in the mirror where I would see it as if it was real, that like my arm wasn't there or my leg wasn't there. In those moments, all I could think about was that I knew my next assignment was going to be Afghanistan. Right. And I didn't know that I was going to make it back in one piece. I had a patient that really crumbled me.
The next bit is hard. So if you're prone to have a hard time with hard, keep listening. Because in the end, you're just listening. Max lived it.
I had a patient that really crumbled me. He was an explosive ordnance disposal guy, and he was actually a Australian fellow. And he was working on a piece of ordnance, and it blew up and blew both of his hands off at the elbows. And it also blew out his eyeballs. And the strange thing was that outside of that, he was virtually unscathed. I mean, a little bit of bruising and peppering on the skin, but like nothing else. The morphine that we were giving him would cause him to have like a amnesic effect through his sleep, and then he would wake up and he would forget that he had lost his arms and he had lost his eyes every day. And he would wake up like trying to claw what he thought was something covering his eyes, but of course he can't reach his face because he has no arms. And then having to explain to this man every fucking morning, hey, it's Max, I'm still your corpsman, you've been here for a little while, you're safe, and your arms and your eyes are gone. Every morning he would just have this crushing defeat, and I'd get him up and I'd walk him around in the room to get him mobile. And he would be joking. He'd be joking and he'd be talking, he'd be asking me if my dick is still okay, because that's all that really matters. And I'd tell him it was, and we would laugh about it, and it would be funny. And I put him back into the bed. And at the end of my shift, I would be crumbled thinking there's no way I'm as hard as that motherfucker. There's no way I'd have that sense of humor. And I just did not believe that I had it in me to be as strong as he was. And knowing that I was going to have to go back to Afghanistan and put myself in the position of this person who was stronger than me on my best day, that was where my PTSD came from. It wasn't patrolling, on a mission. It wasn't seeing guys get blown up in the field. I was used to that. I had something I could do there, Right. But for me, that waiting time between my hospital assignment and finally getting to get off the plane in Afghanistan, that was the hardest part of my life. It's the waiting that's the fucking terrible part.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like once you're in it, you're just fucking in it. You're just responding, reacting, you're flowing, you're doing what you know how to do, and you know that you're well trained to do it. It's the waiting that caused me the nightmares. And that's what really, I think, sort of fractured my mind.
I was thinking about the transition from Afghanistan back to LA. How are things? How are things right after getting back? Was it strange, or was it?
I know I was in denial about a lot of the mental scarring that happened to me in Germany. And I figured, well, I'll just tough it out. I'll just keep bearing it, and it'll eventually subside, and it really didn't. And I was self-medicating with booze, and that was not helping at all. It was strange, and it was really hard to relate, actually. It was really hard to relate because you're surrounded by a community there that's sort of all encompassing. Everybody you know is military and all of that. And then you get out and you're surrounded by, privileged college kids who God bless them, they just don't know any better. And I had more in common with the professors than I had with the students. It was intoxicating how free I was, and how I can write my own orders. I can do what I want. But it was also really hard not having that constant brotherhood, that constant management, for lack of a better way to say it, and having a clear purpose and having confidence in your leadership. I really missed all of that a lot, actually. I still do, It's like leaving a family behind. I'd spent so much time getting really used to my mortality that I wasn't even sure if I was even alive. I thought, what if my perspective is all just my imagination? What if I am actually a comatose patient in the hospital bed and this is all just some extrapolated dream and I'm not even really here? I was totally dissociated from my own life, you know? And that was how I was that was my normal. That was my walking around. You have to really accept your mortality in order to be effective on the battlefield, you know? And I accepted it so much that it was more comfortable for me to be dead than it was to be alive. My father was long distant. He was living back in Tennessee, out of communication with us, and suffering his own mental troubles, his own mental problems. And I got news that my mother had passed. She had a heart attack. And before I could even really get my head around that, her house burnt down. Her house burnt down after she died. My family's home burnt down. I have a sister who has a drug issue, and her tweaker boyfriend committed arson on the house, and away it went. And so I came home to burying my mom and rebuilding this house. So I had 3 sisters looking at me to fix this. You know, in the midst of, you know, sort of burying my mom and seeing this burnt down house, I was really ready to put my 45 in my mouth and just blow my brains out. I was just exhausted. I was already exhausted. And then I felt like and I was exhausted from shit that I had chosen to do. And on some hand, I like could take responsibility for that, and I could manage that in my own way. But then having to take responsibility for burying my mom, you know, being the leader to this family through this tragedy, and then rebuilding a house, that was just more than I could bear, really. Right. And I remember I was going to blow my brains out, but it was raining.
So I'm going to let that sit with you. I want you to think about that for a second. And while you're thinking, I'm going to be chattering. I'm going to chatter specifically. I want to go back even further, because how I met Max is super compelling. I get a call from a friend in Los Angeles, Marcy. Marcy says to me, hey, listen, there's this guy that I think you should meet. She gives me the rebop about the cage fighting, which is enough. She goes, yeah, and he's also a former kind of punk rock guy and skateboarding, you know, stuff that you kind of like. I go, yeah, okay, well, what's he done? She goes, also, he's a nice Jewish boy. So imagine my surprise first time I meet him when he shows up and he's African American. It never came up. I guess it wouldn't have, but mother's Jewish, his father's African American, and he grew up in the Deep South. Yeah.
So I put my pistol away, and I didn't. And I said, fuck it, I'll just do it tomorrow. And the VA told me, look, you know, you're drinking too much, you're fighting too much, you need a hobby. And I said, well, I like to weld, and I know how to make soap. And they said, well, go do those.
Where are you from?
I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, and I have family in Gatlinburg as well. In Tennessee, people in the hills, country people can survive, man. Like, I don't think I ever saw my mother or father call out for like a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician or a painter ever. They never hired out anybody. They just figured it out, you know? Right. So, very, very DIY people and very self-sufficient people. And so among other things, you know, everything from moonshine to soap. Yeah, I can make those things. I mean, I knew how to grow weed and make soap by the time I was in, I don't know, 3rd grade.
So it was like a family activity.
It's a family activity. I have a Milton pour process, cook my soap down, pour it into molds. I mix mine with goat's milk, aloe, coconut oil, and coconut flakes, essential oils. Put it into molds, chop it up, wrap it up in plastic, put stickers on it for labels, and that's it. It's surprisingly simple. If you can tie your own shoes, you can make soap.
So at one point, so you're in LA, you said, we make the soap, and did this initially, how much did this help initially?
It was everything. I mean, idle hands are the devil's work, man. If I don't have a tool or a project in my hands, I was just as likely, you know, drinking and fighting, right. You know? So like it was really, really good for me. It helped me get past a lot of addiction stuff. It helped me get past a lot of PTSD stuff, self-pity stuff. Like having purpose is everything to me. The military is an organization where everybody just decides to mentally get on the same sheet of music at the same time. They decide to all pull on the same rope with the same intensity at the same time. And what that means is that you're gonna learn a lot. And like, if you can bear it, you're gonna learn more faster than you could possibly imagine. If it doesn't kill you or drive you completely crazy, you come away from it light years ahead of your competition. If you can bear it, then what is amazing is you're gonna get really intimate with your own mortality in kind of a Tibetan Book of the Dead kind of way. That's gonna mean you're gonna approach life with a kind of intensity that most people don't ever understand. The slogan for the company is "Don't be nasty." And I stole that. That's a direct ripoff from the Marine Corps. And it's not just when your body is nasty, but like if your bed isn't made or like if your rifle isn't oiled and clean, they'll say, "Hey, you, don't be nasty. Don't be nasty, you." And my mother used to say the same thing when I wouldn't wash my ass, like, "Don't be nasty." But for me, part of the meditative centering process for me in war was I would always find just a moment every day. If it was only a teacup worth of water, I would dab my handkerchief in it and I would wash my ass with soap every fucking day. Because I had this thing after being in Germany where I was like, the last thing I want is to die smelling like feet. And the last thing I want is some guy to have to pick me up and put me on a litter and onto a helicopter and onto planes, and like I'm wearing dirty underwear and I smell like balls. And so when I came home to the States and I saw, veterans living on the street, living nasty, it clicked for me. Right. I didn't know how else I could make a difference, but I did know that like I don't want people in America to have to be dirtier than I was in war. Right. I can't get everybody a fucking house, but like with a soap company, I can damn sure try to get everybody a shower. People think that like I've moved quickly with this business, or people think that I've gotten a lot done, and I always feel like I'm behind because after seeing as much death and pain as I've gotten to see, I feel in a rush to live a full and complete life without excuses. I feel in a rush to get as much done as I possibly can. That is the kind of intensity I was talking about that makes me feel like I'm summiting and I'm passing by my competition. And it puts me in a constant. My competition really isn't even other people. It's the lesser version of myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's easy to make soap. It's hard to make a soap company. And in order for me to make a soap company, I'll just give you a little secret. I just copied terrorists and cartels is what I did. I copied their business models. So terrorists and cartels, we have a tremendously hard time defeating them. And as an intelligence specialist, I'll tell you one of the biggest reasons is because they keep all of their operations portable, scalable, and trainable, right? So if it's like the craft of making cocaine, not very difficult. The craft of making explosives, not very difficult. And if you can keep it scalable and it's already trainable, right? If you can keep it scalable and you can keep it portable, then it becomes really hard to shut it down. So like a cartel can move a drug lab in the time it takes to pack a truck. Right. A terrorist network can move a bomb making facility in the time it takes to pack a truck, So like I wanted to apply what I learned about asymmetrical warfare as an intelligence specialist to my business. One of the little secrets I've been doing is I've been going all over the country and training veterans on what I'm doing. So I kept it really easy to make. I kept it really easy to move the factory anytime I feel like. And now I'm just going around and empowering the veterans to make and sell this soap. No profits come back to me. They just have a job now and they can sell locally. I make my money on my online site anyway. And we're currently in talks to turn into a nonprofit and just keep on pushing to affect positive change in veteran joblessness.
Right.
I'm trying to push this idea that like we can affect positive change, and it just so happens I make really good soap. I really didn't expect it, Eugene. I didn't expect for there to be this groundswell of interest and this groundswell of support, but it's happening. I have all this love and support in my life, and I'm able to affect all this love and support for other people. And I didn't blow my brains out. And I'm so happy that it was raining that day. I was in India. This was, 3 months ago, I guess now. I had this experience where I had this traffic accident where I thought this baby had died, and it turned out to be okay. And these gangsters that I had made friends with sort of showed up to bail me out of jail, and paid off the bribes to get me out of there, and then took me over to the mosque, and I knelt down and prayed, and I just started crying out of happiness and gratitude that, like, for all the shit that I'd seen, that I'm in one piece, at least physically, you know, and that like I've never had to do anything that I really regret, and I find that to be mostly true in life, you know, is that you have this idea, this image in your head of what things are supposed to look like, and it often doesn't really work out quite the way you think it will. But overall, I feel like it still does work out. At least for me, I've been really fortunate. I've gotten to do everything I wanted to do in this life. I just feel really lucky that I am where I am, and all I want to do is just give back. You know, there's a part of me that just wants to run away, Eugene. There's a part of me that just wants to fucking move to Bali and, you know, smoke weed until I can't see straight and just fucking be left alone. And then there's another part of me that feels like I didn't have these experiences out of coincidence, you know, and it's not an accident, and I feel like I owe what I've learned, and I owe to give back. My service doesn't stop because I'm out of uniform. Right. My service stops when I'm fucking dead.
Speaking of dead, you ever know those cats who like, took way too many of a certain drug, way too long, way too hard, pushed it as far as they could humanly go for no discernible reason? Well, I have. It's me! Next up on OZY Confidential, me on me. OZY Confidential is produced by who else? Me, Eugene S. Robinson, and executive produced by Robert Kulos. And this episode was sound designed, edited, and mixed by Jamie Kahn and Nick Johnson. For more OZY Confidential, check us out on OZY.com. That's OZY.com/confidential. We publish editorial companion articles on OZY and photos, videos for every single story. So to check them out, go to OZY.com/confidential. That's OZY.com/confidential. And you can see behind the scenes. You can learn more about the stories we tell and even become an official OC, where you'll be kept in the know on all things OZY Confidential. And if you want to get in touch with us, learn more, or just generally vent, hit us up at confidential@OZY.com. We'll send over a t-shirt if we dig what you got to say, good, bad, or ugly, or maybe we'll get too lazy to do any of that. Thanks. This issue, this version, this edition, go out to Natty Bumpo, Tango and Cash, and Little Debbie Spin Wheels. Thanks.